All right, and welcome to the New Warehouse podcast, first episode of 2025. So, first off, Happy New Year, and thank you so much for tuning in at any point during 2024. And if this is your first time tuning in 2025, welcome. So, we had a great year in terms of reaching new audience members and spreading the word that warehouses are indeed sexy. Of course. If you're not a believer yet, listen to the podcast a little longer and we will definitely make you a believer. So we also had a great time diving further into video content and working on growing our YouTube presence overall. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the New Warehouse on YouTube. We'll be putting up a lot more YouTube exclusive content on there in 2025. And I think that our industry is very visual, so super important to be able to have that component as part of our content and be able to show people not only what we're talking about, but show people what's possible for them in their operation. So if there's something in particular you'd like to see, be sure to let me know. Reach out on LinkedIn, shoot me an email, leave a comment, whatever the case may be. I'm always watching to see what are some of the latest innovative technologies out there for the warehouse so I can create that awareness for you. So what happened in 2024 in the warehousing world? Well, one of the things that is most exciting to me about our industry, and I've said this probably multiple times on the podcast if you're a regular listener, but there's a large amount of high-tech solutions that are finding practical applications in the warehouse industry. We look at AI, we look at humanoid robotics. Where are they finding practical applications in the warehouse, right? So while it is very exciting, I think that it's also created a little bit of an issue. It's clearly become overwhelming for those who are trying to navigate the many different solutions that are out there, especially when it comes to diving into automation and robotics in particular. And a lot of the feedback that I heard from shows like Modex in 2024 was that there's such a vast amount of options. Where do you even begin? So I think that is one of the challenges that we are facing, and I think everybody is facing. I talked to multiple people at all different levels of the industry, whether they are, material handlers working on the floor in a warehouse managers, directors of innovation, C-suite, from the operations side, but the end user side, but also from, the solution provider side as well. And, the market is certainly crowded in a lot of aspects. And I think as we look in 2025, I believe that we will start to see more clarity on where to kind of begin in that journey, whether it's automation or just technology in general, and start to see some more transparency starting to come more into the market. And I think one of the grayest areas probably around automation and robotics specifically has probably been around, what do these solutions actually cost? And I think we'll start to see the curtain pulled back a bit on this, whether it is from the solution providers themselves or third parties trying to facilitate that transparency. I mean, I think that, we have enough of a marketplace now, enough of optionality in the marketplace for many different applications and solutions that, we'll start to see some third-party tools, which there are already some out there. And we'll start to see them have more prevalence and be more of a factor in some of these decision-making, searching for, what's the right solution for me and where should I begin? So I think this will become even more important, especially as more small to medium-sized businesses start to take a step towards automation and robotics. We're seeing that automation and robotics is becoming more accessible. There's companies that are specifically targeting small and medium-sized businesses as their core customer and what they're after. And I think we'll see more of that in 2025. And, for those small and medium-sized businesses, they don't have the the resources, so to speak, or the cash in some cases, to have those, certain employees that can just exclusively look at innovations and exclusively look at potential new technologies or solutions to bring into their operation, right? So I think having that transparency is going to become increasingly more important, especially for those level of businesses as they start to look into these technologies. So, automation and robotics has become certainly prevalent within our industry. I think even going back to Modex again in 2024, I heard a couple people joke that, is this a warehousing trade show or is this a robotics show now? Because there's just so much robotics and automation happening, right? So even though we see it everywhere, and video has certainly taken over a lot of our feeds, like on LinkedIn and other aspects on YouTube too, showing us some of these cool innovations, right? I think the penetration overall is still very low from a warehousing perspective. So there's still a lot of room to grow there, where there's actual real applications coming into play. But I do believe that we are on the cusp of seeing a pretty pivotal moment for automation with the impending port strike coming up on January 16th. So, we're not starting 2025 off slow or quiet, I will say. I think there's a lot of things happening here, but one certainly that is top of mind that I'm watching closely, I think, is this port strike, which is set to come on January 16th. And that's with the ILA. Multiple ports impacted, as we saw earlier in the fall of 2024, where, negotiations, there was some agreement, but suspended the strike until January 15th, I think is supposed to end, right? So January 16th, we're looking to potentially see another strike at the port, which will be super impactful to the supply chain, definitely. But the one sticking point that stands out to me in what the union's calling for is a full ban of automation at the port. So they're trying to protect jobs, which is certainly understandable. They don't want to see job replacement, right, by automation, which I think has been certainly a topic of discussion and debate for quite some time. But what's interesting here is that there has been vocal support from incoming President Trump, who is in favor and sees their side of the ban on automation, from what he said on social media previously, a couple weeks ago. So, which certainly gives more weight to this call for the ban on automation. And it's not a limiting call on automation. It is a total ban on automation, complete ban on automation at these ports. So, which makes it very interesting, I think. So for me, I believe automation is not a necessity in all situations, but I do believe there are applications where it benefits consumers and the workers at the end of the day. With the ports, there are definitely less than ideal conditions in a lot of scenarios for these workers. I looked on Reddit a little bit. There's a subreddit there called Longshoremen. And there's a lot of conversation about, they should get higher pay because, the conditions are not good, right? You have ships arriving at odd hours. Their shifts times can vary greatly. They're out there working in, the weather, extreme weather, getting the containers unloaded. Can be dangerous, definitely. So if we look at that, automation can help to give them an easier and safer workplace, in my opinion. So, there's a case on both sides to be made, certainly, I think. But I think that this is really a pivotal moment for automation, because if the ban does go through, then it's potentially setting a precedent for other industries or unions to do similar bans. And if this leads into warehousing, then organizations, who have been and continue to struggle to attract and retain talent within the warehouse itself, will be challenged even further. So I'll be working on kind of more education this year in multiple different parts of the warehouse arena, but I can only do so much in terms of increasing awareness around these things, or educating people on how to navigate, or increase their skills to be able to work with some of this technology and be open to it. So but I think that it's important for organizations and companies to invest in upskilling these workers, right? To be able to know how to work with automation, or what does their role look like when automation or robotics comes into play. And, I think that if we look 5, 10, 15 years from now, what we see as an entry-level position today will look totally different then, right? I mean, we think about entry-level position in the warehouse industry, right, as a material handler, essentially, right? Somebody's moving boxes, moving pallets around, maybe unloading trucks, something like that, right? But I think if we look, 5, 10 years from now, a material handler will become, we could call maybe a robot handler, right? And will be likely less labor intensive, which I think is good all around. I mean, I think part of the challenge of retaining these workers and attracting new workers is the manual labor intensive part. So as we look at this, I think it'll be very interesting to continue to watch and see what is going to happen with this, because I think it will, I don't know if it will necessarily have a huge impact immediately on the warehousing industry. I mean, I think a port strike certainly will, but at the automation ban itself, it'll be interesting to see how other parts of the supply chain react to that, if that does go through additionally as well. So now on the 3PL front, we're certainly seeing a lot of interesting things as well when it comes to international trade, right? So, Section 321 has certainly been a big topic of discussion, and, recently too, no breaks for the holidays, right, when it comes to the supply chain. You may have seen that the president of Mexico recently made a decision to put tariffs back on textiles incoming into Mexico in a move to protect their textile manufacturing trade. But many companies, e-commerce brands specifically, have been taking advantage of that to kind of alleviate or avoid tariffs on textiles in specific. And for details on this, I would definitely suggest checking out Matt Hertz and Aaron Rubin on LinkedIn. They've been following very closely, posting great information about it. But this is going to, I believe, and from what I can understand from, the little bit of research I've done on this, it's certainly going to push and lead to a surge in demand for 3PLs in the U.S. specifically. Non-domestic 3PLs, part of the reason they gained popularity was to take advantage of some of these, rules where, they could service at a lower cost and avoid these tariffs, right? It's because of some of these rules. But with some of these rule changes, I think for a lot of brands, that appeal is going to be lost, right? And there's going to be uncertainty on what else is going to happen, what else is coming in terms of, trying to move more business through the new administration back into the U.S. So I think you're going to see a surge in demand for U.S. 3PLs. And if you're 3PL in the U.S., then, I'd make sure that you're on top of what is happening here with the rule changes, and, be ready to help the brands as they transition, right? Be set up to take them in. And I think that, there's be a lot of opportunity for U.S. 3PLs here. So that'll be interesting, certainly. And I think that'll be an ongoing topic of discussion through the beginning of the year, if not the entire year, to see kind of what happens here as some of these rules change and the administration changes over as well. So now if we look to 2025, what am I keeping my eye on this year? I really think, and I love these because when I worked in the warehouse, it was always the little things, the little improvements that really kind of kept me excited, I guess you could say, in a sense, and kept me interested in trying to push forward and improve operations. So I think we will see more niche-focused solutions in the warehouse get more attention. So in the past 2 years, I think that, we've seen great runs from companies like Two Boxes, Pacurate, and Rabo, for example, who you could say, are focused on kind of something that was not typically focused on and kind of very niche in a sense, but really specifically focused on doing what they do incredibly well. And obviously shout out and kudos to them. They've all been on the podcast before too. But I think there's a lot of room for these somewhat overlooked problems, or maybe not glaring problems necessarily, to get more love and attention from some very smart folks. And, we will, of course, be trying to get them all on the podcast to help bring awareness to what they're doing and for you and your operation as well. And I'm also looking forward to seeing ASRS systems become more accessible from an installation and cost perspective. And two companies in particular that are on my radar for this are PO, which is an offshoot of AutoStore, and we've talked to on the podcast previously as well. They're specifically focused on ASRS systems for small to medium-sized businesses, and that is their focus. And I think they're doing a really interesting job and pricing model for those small to medium-sized businesses to be able to start to bring in some of these ASRS solutions into their operations. They've already had some successful installations in the U.S. in the past year in 2024, and I'm sure we'll see more in 2025 as well. And the other one is Raputa Robotics, who has been, I guess, known for their Pick Assist AMR, which they've had in the market. But now their ASRS system, which I've been really excited about for quite some time, is finally available in the U.S. market. And what catches my attention about that is it is super flexible when it comes to the assembly and reassembly, depending on changing needs within your operation. You can very easily take it apart, reassemble it. It reminds me of Kinex, the building tool, if anybody remembers that from their childhood. I don't think Kinex is around anymore, but almost in a sense. And the ability to have that flexibility, I mean, especially for 3PLs too, I think is huge, because you have changing needs all the time based on your client base and what they may need, and clients leave, new clients come in. You can easily adjust what the overall system looks like in terms of the footprint, the size, the shape, all those different things. I mean, the shape, obviously very still cube-based as ASRS systems are traditionally, but meaning the shape in terms of, do you have an area that needs it to be like an L to get around certain things, and really being able to maximize that cube, I think. So those are two that I'm definitely looking out for. And I also think that we are seeing, or will be seeing, kind of a real tipping point when it comes to automated inventory management. I think, the space, I don't know if I would say the space is necessarily crowded yet, but there is certainly a growing list of companies that are focused on solving the challenge of manual inventory counting and management, with many companies already investing in these solutions and putting them in place. And we've seen traction around this. Certainly one of the form factors that is addressing this are drones, and there's multiple companies now that are doing that. And if you want to see too a little bit, recently we just did this webinar with Gather AI and Geodis, and it was a great look into how they approach it and what it looks like even, and what the drones are actually doing out there in terms of inventory management and other tasks that they're able to accomplish at the same time of that data capture too. So definitely check that out. But I mean, we've already seen some consolidation in this space where Gather AI again acquired Where a while back, but it will be interesting to see how competitive this space gets with many of these solution providers, having similar form factors in the drone. I mean, there's differentiations there for sure. But it would be interesting to see how that competitiveness continues to grow and what solutions are kind of going to be leading in a sense there. One that sticks out that is a different form factor is Dextery, who we've had on the podcast before too, with their AMR tower type robot that's going and capturing this data versus a drone form factor. So I think that one will be interesting too as well. But I think the challenge here is still that I haven't seen any solution, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm missing a solution out there, but I haven't seen any solution that can tackle the challenge of being able to count individual eaches autonomously, which I believe whoever can figure that out will be very rich, probably, because that is one of the tedious parts about counting. I think probably the most tedious is counting individual units or eaches. We're talking about, those individual selling units where many of these drones or AMRs that are doing counting are tackling the idea of counting, pallets or cases in a sense. So getting down to that each level, I think, is really a key to really take inventory management and counting to an autonomous level. Certainly, counting cases and pallets is a huge help in that spot. But it will be very interesting to see if anybody can address that solution and what to do with it. So these are some of my thoughts and what I'm watching as I head into the new year 2025 here. And I'm very curious to hear what yours are as well. So send me a message on LinkedIn and definitely let me know. What are you thinking? What's top of mind going into 2025? What companies are you watching? What do you think maybe won't go so well in 2025? What might go great in 2025? What are you really thinking about, and what's top of mind? That's always helpful to understand as we create new content here. And as for the new warehouse in the new year, we'll be continuing, of course, to bring you content to help you be more aware of what is happening in the warehouse industry as we head into our 6th year, actually. A little crazy to say that, but, and, of course, we'll be at conferences, so be sure to see us at any of the conferences we are attending this year. So far on the schedule, we have Manifest coming up in February, ProMat in March, we'll have Work Conference in June, and Supply Chain Point as well, which I am happy to be advising on. So in the meantime, connect with me on LinkedIn. Look out for our new event series, Warehousing After Dark, and have a great 2025.